She was 12 years old, and she was trying very hard not to cry. Theodore Baxter noticed that first. Not the torn sleeve of her coat, not the grocery bag she was carrying with both arms, pressed against her chest like it might fall apart if she let go even slightly. He noticed the way her jaw was set, that particular kind of tightness children get when they have decided, with great seriousness, that they will not let the tears come. He had seen that look before, a long time ago, in a mirror. He was standing outside Pemberton's Fine Foods on Elgin Street, trying to work out which pocket he had put his keys in. His briefcase was under one arm. His dry cleaning was over the other's shoulder. A light freezing rain had begun sometime in the last 20 minutes, the kind that doesn't look like much but coats everything in a thin skin of ice that you don't notice until you slip on it. He was 61 years old, a senior partner at a firm that bore his name among three others, and he was in no particular mood to stand in the cold longer than necessary. But he had noticed the girl. She was on the sidewalk about 10 feet away, trying to readjust her grip on a paper grocery bag that had clearly gotten wet. The bottom had softened. The whole thing was beginning to bow inward in that slow, inevitable way that wet paper does. Inside he could see 2 cans, a carton of something, a loaf of bread pressed against the side. A thin plastic bag of apples was balanced on top, leaning dangerously. She shifted her weight. The apples tilted. She caught them with her chin. Theodore Baxter stood there for a moment. He had a car waiting at the corner. He had a conference call at 4:30 that he had not yet properly prepared for. He had, by any reasonable measure, somewhere else to be. He picked up his briefcase and walked toward her. "Can I help you with that?" She looked up at him the way children look at strangers who speak to them unexpectedly, with wariness first, then assessment. She had dark eyes, and there was a redness around them that had nothing to do with the cold, though she was clearly cold too. Her coat was a size too large. The torn sleeve had been mended at some point with thread that didn't quite match. "I'm all right," she said. "You're not," he said, not unkindly. "The bottom of that bag is about 30 seconds from giving out." She looked down at it. She knew he was right. He could see that she knew. "It's not far," she said. "Where are you headed?" A pause. She weighed him. He was wearing a wool overcoat and carrying dry cleaning, which is perhaps not the profile of someone with bad intentions, and she seemed to reason this out in the way children do, quickly and intuitively, and not always correctly, though in this case she was right. "Marlborough," she said. 2 blocks. "I'm going that direction," Theodore said, which was not entirely true. He set down his briefcase and held out his arms. After a moment, she transferred the bag to him, carefully, as though handing over something breakable. He took it with both hands and held from the bottom. The bag made a soft, protesting sound, but held. They began walking. Her name was Brinley. She told him this when she asked, and she said it with the particular brevity of someone who is not in the habit of offering extra information to people she doesn't know. Just Brinley, offered like a ticket, sufficient, no more. "Do you live on Marlborough?" he asked. "My grandmother does, and you're bringing her groceries." "She can't go out when it's icy," Brinley said. "She fell last winter." "I see." They walked in silence for half a block. The freezing rain had settled into something more committed. Theodore had not put up his collar, and it was beginning to matter. Brinley walked without seeming to notice the cold, or perhaps she noticed it, and had decided it was not worth attending to. He had the sense that she made these kinds of calculations often, about what was worth her energy and what was not. "How old are you?" he asked. 12. Do you do this every week?" She looked at him sideways. "Why?" "Just asking. Twice a week," she said. "More if she runs low." "And your parents?" The question landed, and she didn't answer it right away. She walked 2 more steps and said, "My mom works Fridays and Saturdays." That was not quite an answer, and they both knew it, and Theodore did not press. What he was thinking about, though he would not have said so then, was his own daughter. She was 34 now, and she lived in Vancouver, and she sent him cards at Christmas that were signed with her name and her husband's name, but no particular message. This was the architecture of their relationship. Sufficient, no more, just like Brinley's ticket. He was aware that he had built this architecture himself over many years through the particular form of absence that busy men construct without realizing it is construction. He had not thought about that in a while. It was strange to think about it now, on Elgin Street, in the freezing rain, carrying someone else's groceries. They turned onto Marlborough. "It's the yellow one," Brinley said, "with the blue door." It was a narrow house, older, the kind that had been divided into units at some point. The front steps had a strip of grip tape on them that was peeling at one corner. There was a wreath on the blue door that still had some orange plastic leaves on it from autumn, not yet changed out for winter. "I've got it from here," Brinley said. Theodore looked at the steps. He looked at the bag. "I'll carry it up." She seemed like she might argue, then didn't. She went ahead and knocked. She didn't have a key, he noticed, or perhaps the knock was just courtesy. and a few seconds later the door opened and an older woman appeared. She was perhaps 80, small, with the careful way of standing that people adopt after they have fallen and learned to distrust their own legs. She looked at Theodore with an expression he could not immediately read. "Gran," Brinley said, "this man helped me carry the bag. The bottom got wet." The woman looked at the bag. She looked at Theodore. Something in her face adjusted. "Well," she said, "come in out of that then, both of you." Her name was June Alderton, and she made tea the way people make tea when they mean it. None of the mug with a bag approach, but a proper pot, warmed first, left to steep with the concentration of someone who had decided that this was worth doing correctly. Her kitchen was small and immaculate, full of the kind of quiet that comes from someone spending long days alone in a space and learning to make peace with it. She set 3 cups on the table without asking. "Sit," she said. Theodore sat. He was not certain how he had come to be in this kitchen. But the freezing rain was still going outside, and the tea was being poured, and Brinley was taking off her coat and hanging it on the hook by the door with the efficiency of long practice, and it seemed rude to leave. "You're a lawyer," June said, setting down the pot. He looked up. "How did you know?" "The briefcase. And the way you walked. Lawyers walk like they're always going somewhere important." She sat down across from him. "Are you? Am I what?" "Important." He considered the question with more care than it perhaps required. "That depends," he said finally, "on who you ask." June made a sound that might have been a laugh, spoken like a lawyer. Brinley came and sat beside her grandmother, pulling her cup toward her, curling her hands around it. The redness around her eyes had faded a little in the warmth. "She does this twice a week," Theodore said. "In all weather. I know what she does," June said without defensiveness, just stating a fact. "She's 12. I'm aware of her age." June looked at her granddaughter with the particular expression of someone who has worried quietly about something for long enough that the worry has become part of the furniture. "She's also very capable." "Gran," Brinley said mildly. "You are. I know I am." "That's not what he means." Theodore looked at the girl. "What do I mean?" Brinley turned her cup in her hands. "You mean someone should be helping her instead. Someone older." She said it without accusation, just matter of fact, the way children state uncomfortable things when they have thought them through and decided there's no point in dancing around them. "But there's only me." The kitchen was quiet for a moment. Outside, sleet tapped against the window. Theodore Baxter was by profession and by temperament a man who knew how to control a room. He had argued before appellate courts. He had sat across from people who had done terrible things and maintained a neutral expression while doing it. He was not easily moved, he found, sitting at this small kitchen table with his tea getting cold, that he was moved. He didn't say anything. There was nothing useful to say. He drank his tea and listened to June tell him about the house. She'd lived there for 31 years, raised 2 children in it, one of whom now lived in Yellowknife and called when he remembered, and one of whom was Brinley's mother, who worked Fridays and Saturdays. He didn't ask what had happened to Brinley's father. Some questions are their own answer. He left after 40 minutes. The sleet had eased to something lighter, a fine mist that caught the streetlights and made the whole street look as though it was wrapped in gauze. He walked back to where his car was waiting, and his driver started the engine when he saw him coming. "Elgin?" his driver asked. "Yes." "No. Wait a minute." He stood on the sidewalk. He was thinking about the torn sleeve, mended with wrong-colored thread. He was thinking about the way Brinley had caught the apples with her chin and not said anything about it, just readjusted and kept going. He was thinking about June's kitchen, immaculate and quiet, and the 3 cups set down without asking, and the wreath that still had the autumn leaves on it because no one had come to change it. He was thinking about his daughter in Vancouver, who signed her cards with her name and her husband's name. He had a conference call at 4:30. "Give me a moment," he said. He took out his card, the firm's card, heavy stock, embossed, and he went back to the blue door and knocked. He waited. June opened it, and her expression shifted into something careful, as though she was preparing herself for something she didn't want. "I'm not here to," he started, and then he didn't know how to finish that sentence. He held out the card. "I have a foundation. We fund programs for young people, mentorship, university preparation, that sort of thing." He paused. "If Brinley's interested at some point, when she's older, there are opportunities." June looked at the card. She did not take it. "What kind of man gives out his business card to a child he met on the street?" she said, and her voice was not hostile, but it was not warm either. He stood there and took that. She was right to ask. "The kind who doesn't know a better way to help," he said, "and knows that's not a good excuse." A long moment passed. Then June took the card and looked at it, and something in her face changed, very slightly, like a door opening an inch. "You can talk to her yourself," June said. "If you want. She's still here." Brinley was washing up the teacups. She dried her hands on a towel and looked at the card he gave her. She read it the way she read everything, carefully, completely, before she said anything at all. Theodore Baxter, she said. What does the foundation do exactly? So he told her. He told her about the bursary program and the mentorship matching and the summer institutes at 3 different universities and the applications process, which was open to students from grade 8 onward. He told her without making it feel like charity, because it wasn't, not technically. It was a process with criteria and applications and selections, and it applied to hundreds of students, and she would have to qualify on her own merits. I would, she said. Not I think I would. Not I might, just. I would. He believed her. June stood in the doorway of the kitchen while he talked, one hand resting on the doorframe. At some point she had crossed her arms, but by the end she had uncrossed them, which Theodore had enough experience reading rooms to understand was significant. When he left the second time, Brinley walked him to the door. Thank you for carrying the bag, she said. You would have managed. I know, she said. But it helped. He walked back to the car. His driver had the heat on, and the radio playing something low. Theodore got in and closed the door and sat for a moment without saying anything. Sir, his driver said. Give me a minute, Theodore said. He was thinking about something his own mother had told him, a long time ago before she died in the winter of the year he made partner. She had said, You are very good at arriving where you're going. She had meant it as a compliment. He had taken it as one. It had taken him decades to understand that what she was also saying, very quietly, was that she wished sometimes he would look around at where he already was. He looked at the house with the blue door. The sleet had stopped. The autumn wreath was still up, still a little orange, still a little bare. Then he took out his phone and dialed his daughter's number. She answered on the third ring. She sounded surprised. They had not spoken, actually spoken, since the previous March, and before that it had been longer. Dad, she said. Hi, sweetheart, he said. I wanted to call. I don't have a reason. I just wanted to call. A pause. A long one, and then very quietly. Okay, she said. Okay. Hold on. Let me go somewhere I can talk. Brinley submitted her application to the Baxter Foundation the following October, 2 months after her 13th birthday. Her personal essay was 430 words, and it described, in precise and understated detail, the route she walked twice a week from her apartment on Gladstone to her grandmother's house on Marlborough, and what she thought about on the way. She did not mention the groceries or the wet bag or the man in the wool coat. She wrote instead about her grandmother's kitchen, and the tea made properly, and the particular kind of knowledge that comes from spending time in a quiet room with someone who has been through more than you yet, and is willing to sit with you while you figure it out. The selection committee awarded her one of 7 spots in the university preparation stream, which came with academic coaching through the rest of secondary school and a guaranteed interview at 4 partner universities upon graduation. Theodore did not sit on the selection committee. The foundation's rules prohibited that. Board members could not participate in individual selections. He learned of her acceptance the way he learned of all acceptances, a list of names, alphabetical, delivered to him on a Tuesday morning, in an email from the program director. He saw Carling, her last name. He had learned from the application package he was categorically not supposed to have seen, and he sat at his desk for a moment. Then he forwarded the email to his assistant without comment and picked up his phone. His daughter was moving back to Ottawa in the spring. They had talked about this on the phone in November, and again at Christmas, which she had spent with him for the first time in 9 years. It was not an easy Christmas. There were long silences and one dinner that had gone a direction no one intended, but she had come, and they had sat in the same room, and that was a beginning. Even if beginnings are not the same as resolved things, he hadn't expected it to be easy. He had stopped, somewhere between March and December of that year, expecting repair to be easy. He had just decided to try it anyway. He saw June Alderton again the following April. He was walking on Marlborough. He had no particular reason to be on Marlborough, except that he had begun taking different routes through the city, which was a new habit, one he had developed without entirely understanding why. He saw her on her front step, wrestling with a hanging basket that she was trying to attach to a hook beside the blue door. The basket had pansies in it, purple and yellow, the kind that can survive the last frosts of an Ottawa spring. He crossed the street. Let me help you with that, he said. June squinted at him. You again, me again. She handed him the basket. He was taller, and the hook was no trouble. He hung it straight. She got in, June said without ceremony. I expect you know. I do. June looked at the basket. She adjusted one of the pansies that was bent at an angle. She wrote me a letter, she said, when she heard, on paper, with a pen. I didn't know she still knew how to do that. What did it say? June was quiet for a moment. It said, Dear Gran, I got the thing. I'm going to work hard and make you proud. Don't worry about the Fridays. She looked at him. That last part is from her, about the groceries. She'll come on different days now, apparently. She's worked it out. Theodore nodded. You have children? June asked. A daughter. How are things with her? He looked at the pansies. Better, he said. Getting better. June seemed to find this acceptable. She gave a small nod, the kind that doesn't mean much and also means a great deal. Tea? She said. I can't today, he said. I have somewhere to be. You always do, she said, without reproach, just stating a fact, the way her granddaughter stated uncomfortable things. He laughed. He couldn't help it. I'll take a rain check, I'll hold you to that, June said. He walked back to the street. Behind him, he heard the door open and close. The pansies moved a little in the April wind. He thought about his daughter, who was coming home in 6 weeks. He thought about the room he was repainting, her old room, a color she had chosen herself when she came at Christmas, and stood in the doorway for a long time, and then finally said, maybe something green. He thought about the things that are not fixed but are moving, which is not the same as fixed, but is not nothing either. He walked back to Elgin Street by the longer route, the one that went past the old Pembertons, which had closed in February, and was now a temporary hoarding of plywood and construction notices. He stood in front of it for a moment, looking at where the door had been. Some things close, and you don't get to go back to them. But you carry what happened there. You carry it the way a girl carries a bag of groceries with her whole arms pressed against her chest, because it matters, and because she said she would, and because on balance, even when things are heavy, you are glad to be the one holding them.